Hello, everyone. My name is Erin Smith. I am a professional tarot reader and an associate marriage and family therapist. And this is the week ahead reading for January 27th through February 2nd. So in addition to having a full moon this week, which is happening on Wednesday, the 29th, in the sign of Aquarius, we just have a lot going on in the world. And I think that a lot of people, myself included, are feeling trepidatious, maybe a little bit on edge regarding world events and things happening here in the United States. So this reading is really an offering. It's doing it for myself as much as I'm doing it for all of you. And I am just going to seek insider guidance around what would be most helpful for me to keep in mind, to put into practice in order to navigate these choppy waters and be as grounded and aligned with positive change as is possible. So I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to go silent. I'm going to concentrate while I shuffle, and I will be with you momentarily. I'm just going to say a prayer over these cards. So it's kind of an interesting message. And it's definitely asking us to be aware of and understand that collectively and individually, we are confronting a wound, a deeply held wound. In fact, one of the cards coming up in this spread is central to my thesis. Many of you know that I wrote my thesis on tarot and detachment. It's actually the reason I started the channel. It was initially to sort of delve into the reasons why I'm making this correlation between these two systems, understanding attachment wounding through the lens of the archetypes of the tarot. And ultimately, the reason that I made this association is that long before I went to school to become a therapist, I was reading cards for people. And a broad cross section of the population would come to me on a weekly basis. People from all walks of life, all ages, all gender identifications, all economic brackets and ethnicities. And what I was noticing is that certain cards would come up, and when they would come up in a reading and I would begin to describe sort of their energetic or archetypal nature, specifically in regards to familial dynamics, intergenerational wounding, then what I would do, I would get feedback from the people that I was reading for that they identified with that was something that resonated. And so I started to track this. I started to notice that when certain cards would come up, it would, it's like what the cards do. They reveal insight in regards to what is going on both within our own psyche and then how that's playing out in the external world. And this card was sort of central to my thesis because what I recognized is that this is a perfect visual and emotional representation of attachment wounding, of what it feels like when we come into the world and our earliest experience is that of exile, denial of getting our needs met. And the thing is that I think this is something that a lot of people forget because, obviously we grow up, we become adults, we learn things about ourselves and our patterns, and we tend to look backward through the lens of our adult understanding of the world. And I think it's really pertinent and relevant to understand that when we come into the world and for whatever reason, our caregivers are not able to meet our needs in a good enough way, it is always experienced by the infant as a death threat. And there's really good reason for this. When we are infants, we are completely dependent on our caregivers to do everything for us. We are essentially we're born premature. Other animal species come out of the womb and they're kind of functional. They can stand on their own and they can learn to feed themselves after a really short period of time. And this is not the case with humans. Our heads are so big that if we were to develop to a point of being somewhat self-sufficient, we would, in essence, kill our mothers, because there's no way that our head would be able to fit through the birth canal. And so we're completely dependent. We cannot roll over. We cannot feed ourselves. We cannot put covers on ourselves when we're cold. The only way that we have to express a need is to cry or to look really cute, right? Hopefully one of those two strategies works. But when our caregivers are, and again, there's an infinite number of reasons why our caregivers are not able to meet our needs. It may be financial stress within the home, and both parents have to work constantly, and so they can't show up and tend to their children in the way that they need to. Maybe there's conflict within the marriage, and this emotional turbulence and strife keeps them from being able to attune to their infants and recognize that there's a need that must be met. It could be alcoholism, that both one or both parents are struggling with an addiction, and that is taking them out of the ability to be sensitively attuned to the children and even making them volatile in their characterization. There's so many reasons, right? And I want to make this clear. It's not because they're bad or evil people. It's that they are struggling with their own trauma and wounding. And this just gets passed down through the generations. But it is always experienced by the child at that level of deprivation is experienced as a death threat. And it gets deeply internalized in our psyche. And and it colors our experience of the world moving forward. I think it's important to say, that attachment research is a post-World War II phenomenon, that a lot of what was discovered and, studied, and, there were studies done by Mary Ainsworth called the Strange Experience or Experiment. And she essentially looked at behavior of children, of 1-year-olds, in relation to kind of activating their attachment system. So, normal things like stressors that happen, like they're playing with their mothers and the mother leaves the room, and then noticing characteristics of behavior in response to that, noticing characteristics of behavior when the mother comes back into the room. And by studying this, enough data was accumulated to be able to start making some observations about what a person's attachment strategy is. And an attachment strategy is simply the infant's best way. They modify their own behavior in order to get the best results possible based on the conditions that they're raised within. So for instance, if you crying upsets your parents, makes them mad, makes them frightened or anxious, infants will learn to suppress awareness of their own emotional states, and they won't cry. Now, does that mean that they're not feeling stressed themselves or still having some need that's unmet? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that they are noticing, feeling the internal state of their parents, and instinctually they notice to alter their behavior. And again, this is all happening in an unconscious level. This is not a choice. It's not like the infant decides this is how they're going to strategize, getting their needs met. It's totally instinctual. It's happening in the unconscious. And then we carry it with us, right? Around the age of 4, when we start to speak, we begin to develop a more kind of conceptual map of ourselves and the world. But it comes out of that imprinting that's already happened at an early age. And so if there's a feeling of exile, of being in exile, of having your needs denied, of being rejected, of there not being enough in the world. There's not enough food. There's not enough warmth. There's not enough attention. There's not enough interaction. You begin to feel that the world is a treacherous place, that it is impossible for you to get your needs met. And then as you grow into an adult, that internalized feeling colors the way that you move about the world. So I think what's so interesting about this, clearly, these characters, I think of them as orphans walking through the snow, crippled by circumstances, without food, without shelter. It's easy to feel this feeling of devastation when you look at these characters, but it's also important to note that they're walking past a church that's lit from within. And of course, this church is just a representation of salvation. And, it doesn't need to be denominational. We're not talking about, it happens to look kind of Christian, but it could be a temple. It could be any form of organization that is offering assistance. So it could be extended family members. It could be friends, chosen family. It can be a teacher who takes you under their wing and offers you assistance. This represents all the elements in life that are available to us that can help us move forward in a good way. And what we notice in this scene is that the orphans walk right on by. They cannot see that as a possibility for themselves. And this is something that also came out within the attachment research. If you are raised in a household where you have acquired an insecure attachment, you have a very hard time recognizing or even feeling a kinship with people who have a secure attachment. It's unfamiliar. You're far more used to, I don't know, a situation where somebody is withholding praise or warmth, where somebody is angry in their affect, they're scary. And we are hardwired to move towards that which is familiar. So if we don't know what it's like to get our needs met, it's hard to recognize people and institutions that can offer us assistance. And so a big part of the attachment repair work that I and others do is about beginning to work with, it's called metacognition. It's like thinking about thinking or mentalizing, imagining possibilities that you can't imagine because you don't have a direct experience with it, and beginning to move our understanding of what's possible in a direction so that we can begin to see possibilities where previously they were none. It's part of the attachment repair work. And so what this card is saying is that, yes, there is an immediate crisis happening, but the deeper long-term issue is that you cannot take advantage of the good things in life if you believe they're for everyone else and not for you. You have to begin to turn your attention towards the goodness, the people who can and will offer assistance. So I think this is super relevant to the time that we're in right now. It's really easy to get into a state of total despair based on what's going on in the world. I mean, it's easy, right? Things seem extremely dire and maybe impossible to fix. But we must collectively turn our attention towards those who are offering assistance. People and institutions who are warmly welcoming us to join in the fold of the congregation. That the people who are loving and assisting out of a sense of their own humanity. It's not transactional. It's not like I'll help you in order to get something for me. I mean, except for the fact that a sense of belonging, like there's a good feeling that comes from helping other people and having a true intimate connection with others. And I do think it's something that we are sorely lacking in society today. I think we crave it. We crave this kind of connection with community. There have been so many, particularly since the pandemic, there's been a dismantling of places where people can go to feel that kind of connection and community support and mutual assistance. So this is, I believe that what this card is saying is that we're the walking wounded. And it's a lot of, I believe, the source of why we're seeing some of the debasement of like compassion and a sense of humanity or camaraderie in the world. There's a wound that people are operating out of. And for those of us who wish to have a new experience, we're being called to create community, to intentionally look for the people and institutions and situations that are abundantly offering assistance. And what's interesting, okay, so let's talk about this guy. So swords are the suit of thoughts and ideas and communication. And the way I think about the Seven of Swords, I essentially call it the people-pleasing card. And the energy of the Seven of Swords is sort of an expression of inauthenticity. And again, I don't want to vilify this. It's a coping mechanism. It's sort of like when you come from this, you develop these coping mechanisms to survive what you've come through and to navigate the world. And if you've been told, or if you have internalized a sense that your authentic self is unacceptable, right? We need you to be something different than who you are in order to be accepted. Then we figure out who to be or what sort of persona to construct in order to get our needs met. So the Seven of Swords is sort of like trying to figure out what other people want you to be or what they want you to say, and contorting yourself to fit within that framework in order to get your needs met. And ultimately what the Seven of Swords is saying is that it doesn't work very well, right? So if we are altering ourselves to please others, then there is always this disconnect. There's always this feeling of being disconnected, because internally there's this sort of cognitive dissonance. It's like, well, if they knew who I really was, then I wouldn't be loved and accepted. And so even if this persona that you've constructed is kind of working in terms of navigating the world, it still it allows for this feeling of being disconnected, of not being seen and understood for who you truly are. And so I think that Spirit is also asking us to look at where we have where we've been afraid to speak our truth or to express our true feelings and interests out of fear of being cast out. And how might we reorient ourselves in the world towards love and compassion of both self and other? Cups are the suit of love and emotions and intuition. And ultimately, what these two cards together are saying is that when we go in and do our own inner work, when we are willing to feel the full spectrum of emotions, including the ones that feel overwhelming or intolerable, because this is the thing, like if you are living in an open-hearted way, it means that you're willing to feel all your feelings. You're not curating your human experience anymore. I'm only willing to have the good feelings, and I don't want to have any of the bad feelings. That this level of compartmentalization or disassociation actually shuts us down to what we like, what we don't like, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. We cannot feel what our true reactions to the world are, and therefore we also can't empathize with anyone else, right? If you're flat affect, if you are distanced from your own emotional states, then how are you really going to be able to have an intimate relationship with another person? Because in order to be seen, that comes with a kind of recognition. Okay, so we have this thing called mirror neurons, right? When I see somebody else crying, it instantly makes me want to cry. We have evolved this way so that we can form cooperative societies. Your pain is my pain when I have access to my own emotions. And, if you have been neglected or denied any kind of care in your early childhood, this can be a long road of being able to contact those extreme emotions of grief and sadness and anger and process them safely with a trusted person. Then what happens is there starts to be more spaciousness within your own experience to, painful feelings tend to be overwhelming, and they tend to be very loud, and they tend to eclipse all other emotions. But as we begin to have that process of contacting it, feeling it, and then allowing those emotions to move, then we actually can notice good feelings too, like subtle, pleasant sensations, like the feeling of the sun on your face, or the, sound of birds in the trees, and that subtle sensation of pleasantness that comes up in response to these types of things, that there's enough space for that to sort of make it into your conscious awareness. And then again, what happens is that when you're in relationship to others and somebody's pain comes to the surface, because you've contacted your own pain, it isn't so repellent. You're able to hold space and access empathy and compassion when you're in the presence of somebody else's activations. And what this does is it creates, it is the essence of intimacy. We are able to be intimately connected with ourselves and others when we have access to our own emotions, and we can talk about them and share them with others. That this is an important part of how we are going to find those elements of assistance. And it does mean that we have to be honest about our feelings and find skillful ways of articulating them, sharing them with others. And what Spirit is saying is that when we can do that, there's no end to the beauty that we can experience and create in the world. The Nine of Cups is like winning the tarot lotto. It's saying dare to dream big, because anything your heart desires can and will be made manifest. I mean, that's a pretty profound thing to try to wrap your mind around. Again, especially in light of just present day circumstances. What if we could envision a world where we're living in perfect symbiosis with one another and the natural world around us? What if, in order for me to succeed, someone else doesn't have to fail? What if we can all work together to create a life where each person thrives in all the ways that they need to? Everyone can feel loved. Everyone can feel appreciated for their own unique gifts. Each person is contributing something that is beautiful and essential to the growth of our society as a collective whole. That it isn't hierarchical. It isn't a small percentage of people have everything and everyone else has nothing. What if there was this circulation of wealth and well-being? And again, that this is not just about human society, but it's about the way humans interact with the natural world. What if we learned that we are part of nature, and that we can tend to the land in order to receive the gifts that the land gives us on a daily basis? What if we become good stewards of the earth and she yields abundance for us as a result? Like, these are the kinds of things that I imagine when I think about the Nine of Cups. And really what it's saying is that no beautiful vision is too big to be realized. And that it is actually, we're being called to look within our hearts and imagine this possibility and start to attune to it. Like, notice the elements in our world, in our daily lives, that have a similar tonal quality to that, and then to align ourselves with it. And a lot of this is just like becoming a channel for life force energy, being a creative lightning rod to make the world a better place. Aces are like getting a divine download from the universe. I've been reading all this research lately by Rupert Sheldrake on morphic resonance. And it sort of makes me laugh a little bit. I mean, not because I don't think it's brilliant and amazing, but because it's very morphic resonance, or what he's calling morphic resonance, is very similar to Jung's concept of the collective unconscious. When we as individuals begin to vision a way forward that's good for everyone, more and more people have access to that vision. That what you do as an individual feeds into the collective consciousness, and everyone has access to it on some essential level. And so make no mistake, what you are doing individually is being felt by others. And the more people that come together to hold this vision of profound benefit for the greater whole, the easier it is for us to realize it. I've been on here a long time, so I'm not going to go too much into Rupert Sheldrake's theory of morphic resonance, but I really encourage you to go look it up on the internet. There's plenty of information out there about it, and it's fascinating. It's essentially, I don't know, another reference to it is 100 monkeys theory. What they've just done all these studies with rats mostly, where they'll teach rats how to do an underwater maze, and it'll be, you know, a small population of rats, and it'll get easier and easier. Look, I'm explaining it. It'll get easier and easier for them to do the maze, and more of them will know how to do it. And there's almost like this peak number of rats that know how to do it within a controlled population. And then what they started to notice is that people in other parts of the world that had nothing to do with that population of rats that were replicating the experiment were having the exact same data. That these rats across the world could do the water maze as proficiently as the last generation of rats that was separated from them. Go look it up. It's fascinating. Again, it's heartening to know that if we come together with a vision of positivity and cooperation for one another, that it is possible that we can, I don't know, counterbalance some of the horrible injustice that we're seeing implemented right now. And so I'm gonna leave it there. Let's all have a vision for this new moon of love, cooperation, success, abundance for everybody. As always, many blessings to all of you. Thank you for listening.